Alrighty, let's do this. 3 left. Woo! 3 left. We can do this. Hang in there, everybody. Hang in there. 3 left. It'll all be over soon. We have medium infantry, heavy infantry, and light cavalry left. What to do? What to do? Let's do... polish off the cav. Yeah, let's do it. Let's polish off the cav. No more cavalry for you. So what are these lists, huh? If you're the first time you ever clicked on one of the tier lists, here's the quick introduction. For everybody else, just groan and roll your eyes and we'll get over it. All right, we're doing a tier list. It's not about campaign or multiplayer because it is impossible to compare these things together when you're talking about campaign stuff, because like Tic-Tac-Toe's campaign makes Pterodons crazy strong while Mazda Mundi's doesn't. So when I put Pterodons on a tier list, are they S tier because Tic-Tac-Toe buffs them, or are they D tier because Mazda Mundi buffs them? Like, how are we rating them? That kind of thing. So that's impossible, and there's technologies. There's lord effects, there's whether or not they're gold chevron, there's whether or not you can put items on them, like the Molder campaign for Throt. Anyway, it's too much stuff. So we just take the base unit, put it in a vacuum, drop it into the battlefield, and we're like, all right, how do you do on your own? All right, so that's what we're comparing. Doesn't really matter to multiplayer campaigns, just how cost-effective the unit is stat-wise. And cost comes up because that's how you compare things to even be on a fair playing field. If something costs 10 million gold and it gives you 100 melee attack and 100 melee defense, if you don't care about cost, then that unit is better than a unit that gives you 25 melee attack and 25 melee defense that costs like 100 gold. But I mean, you could afford a whole army of that other one. You can only afford one of the super expensive guy. So gold is just how effective these guys are at delivering stats to your army for the least amount of resources. If you're like, well, in campaign, I don't have any gold troubles, or I'm rich as hell. Okay, cool. That's also not relevant to how important a good a unit is, because if you don't care about money, then yeah, just grab the most expensive one. Who cares? Let's get into it. First up, Illyrian Reavers for light cavalry. Illyrian Reavers are actually, we might start out on S tier. Illyrian Reavers are the pinnacle of what every light cavalry hopes to be. Incredibly high stats from martial prowess and being a high elf. Incredibly high leadership as well from being a high elf. Light armor, but that's going to be kind of a running theme through the light cavalry section. Very, very fast. Decently hard hitting for being a light cavalry unit. Nothing negative to say about Illyrian Reavers, and they're only at a 550 gold price point, so even pretty cheap as far as light cavalry goes. Illyrian Reavers are living the good life, and they are S tier to start out. High elves finally getting up into S tier. In A, right beneath them are Dark Riders or Dark Riders with shields. Okay stats, not incredible. Still very good, but not as incredible as the Illyrian Reavers are. But they do get an occasional stat buff from Murderous Prowess after enough of the Dark Elf army has been fighting for a while. They get a whole bunch of leadership and damage, which is quite nice for them. Their shielded variant that they can bring also gives them more melee defense and makes them a little tankier to archers. Great at running down units. Decent against other light cavalry. A little less punch than the Illyrian Reavers, though, so they won't trade up as effectively. Still, good little harassing light cav. Glade Riders, I know that picture looks weird. I just used the asset kit that CA gave me, so they apparently have the old Glade Rider in here, and that happens. But this is the 550 Wood Elf cavalry piece. I'm going to put it at B. It's a fine light cavalry. Good shock damage against infantry, good at running stuff off. Really quite terrible at dueling any other cavalry, even other light cavalry. Glade Riders feel like they just lose. But they're not overall bad, and they have high leadership. Again, for a relatively low price point, but if you compare a Glade Rider to an Illyrian Reaver, who are literally the same cost, and it's not even close, that's why one of them is an S and the other one's just B. It's fine. Doomfire Warlocks, also B. Much more damage than a Glade Rider, but also much more expensive. And being that expensive, how squishy they are is a little concerning, which is why they're in B instead of A or S. Still out of C. They're still a solid light cavalry piece. Have magic damage. I believe they also have poison. They have some bound spells, especially the bound Doombolt can be particularly annoying for certain factions to deal with. But being a light cavalry at that high price point comes with a lot of risk, and similar to what we said about Vargeists and Ripperdactyls in a very different list, they're so squishy that if you forget about them for even a moment, they will get massacred, and that is a large portion of your army you just lost very quickly. So elite light cavalry is a spooky concept, and they're feeling that vibe. Skeleton Horsemen. In-Cars is going to get mad at me, but I'm putting them in D tier. I think Skeleton Horsemen are abysmal. Now in campaign, you might be like, they're free. Whatever. That's impossible. That's an impossible metric to weigh against, because then everything the Tomb Kings have is S tier, because everything they have is free. So, no. We'll go off their multiplayer price point of 400 gold, or the fact that you have to build entire buildings to get like 2 of them, and then they're not so pretty. They do less damage than a lot of dog units do, and since they're cavalry, they do some impact damage here and there, I guess, but they're worse at chasing stuff down than dogs are, and that's all these guys are, is they're just dogs on horses. So, I don't know. Their melee stats are pretty abysmal. They die in a light breeze. I hate them. I think they're a waste of your money. The Hekara Horsemen, we can be a little more positive on. 650 gold, still pretty bad stats, still very squishy, but they do a little more damage, I guess. They're not that great at killing infantry. They're not that great at killing other cavalry. They're just not that great. But they are better than Skeleton Horsemen. Even better enough over their price point. Like, obviously, 250 more gold. Of course they're better, but like, they're more better than that. Hex Wraiths, D tier. Hex Wraiths are abysmal. They have terror, 55% physical resistance, and armor piercing. But something about this unit isn't right. Something about this unit does not work. And maybe it works for you, and maybe you have it higher on this list. That's great, dude. You're entitled to your opinion. That's perfectly fine. I have no issue with that. For me, I watch these guys, and I swear they get up to an enemy cavalry and they just T-pose, and they're like, I'm a ghost. Woo, run away. And I'm like, swing your scythe, bro. And they're like, no, I'm scaring him. Woo. I'm like, swing. They never feel like they swing. They don't do any damage for some reason. And any magic damage just kills them off. But having no armor, 55% physical resistance, and no armor is actually pretty brutal. Like, they still take a lot of damage from basic archers or basic light cavalry. So these guys aren't tanky. They're very expensive. They don't do that much damage, and there's just nothing to them. Hex Wraiths are insanely bad. And they have been for a long time. I don't know what's wrong with this unit. They just don't make contact well. Goblin Wolf Rider is going to go in C tier. I do actually use these guys from time to time now, especially versus Slanesh or Demons of Chaos. I like to just chuck them at enemy light cavalry that is more expensive than mine, like Doomfire Warlocks that are on this list, or Seekers, which might be on this list, or were they on the other cavalry one? I don't remember. There's been a lot of lists over a lot of time. Goblin Wolf Riders for only 300 gold are one of the cheapest light cavalry options you can get, if not the cheapest. And they are really good at running stuff down. They're good bodies, but you get exactly what you pay for. 300 gold, they're piss poor melee stats. They're horrible leadership. They can't kill anything. They're only good at killing stuff that's already running away, and that does keep them out of B tier. I shouldn't say you get exactly what you pay for, because that would be a B tier type thing to say, but you're paying 300 gold, you get very little out of it, maybe a little less than you should, so Spider Riders are more B tier. 425 gold. They apply poison and have a decently high melee defense, so they can be rather tanky, just little roadblocks, nuisances. Still only 425 gold, so rather cheap for what you're looking at, but the poison debuff is pretty significant. They do almost no damage, though, so I wouldn't bother taking them if you want to kill stuff. Mounted Yeomen back in D tier. Sure, they're cheap, but they're as bad as Goblin Wolf Riders. In fact, I would rather have a Goblin Wolf Rider than a Mounted Yeoman, and the Wolf Rider is 100 gold cheaper. Terrible unit. Centaurs just got a cost increase, and I still put them as an S tier light cavalry. Even with the nerfs, I still think they're S tier. Centaurs got some buffs a while back that gave them elliptical model shapes. It allows them to crowd in around a target better and get more hits in, instead of circular model shapes, which pushes other Centaurs off to each side, so you have less of a surround. Centaurs are great. They have perfect vigor as long as their leadership is high. So for the first part of the fight, they will have high stats, and then in the late game, they'll have more vigor than you, because even when they run out of perfect vigor, now they have to start draining when you're already exhausted. Very, very fast, lightly shielded, high weapon strength, and then they have a bunch of Beastmen buffs they get. So yeah, Beastmen, Centaurs, very, very good. And they are like the mainstay of that faction, so they should be very good. Seekers as well, going to go in S tier. For 1,000 gold, they did just get an 100 gold cost increase, and I still think they are S tier as well. Just a quite a bit more expensive, but the armor piercing on these guys is insane. They kill single entities and other heavy cavalry very, very, very quickly. They do solid damage against enemy infantry. The only downside to Seekers, I guess, is their high price point, 1,000 gold. Yeah, it's not nothing, but also their very low armor and relatively low-ish melee defense means, like I said about the Goblin Wolf Riders, I use them to counter Seekers. You don't want to punch down with Seekers. It's weird, but like Seekers punch amazingly up or even, but if you're fighting stuff worse than you, you're still going to take a lot of damage because your armor is so low. So you want to fight stuff that's worth fighting. If you're just fighting chaff, the chaff is going to drag your Seekers down and then they'll die. And they have they're demonic, so if they get low enough at all on leadership, they'll just crumble away into nothingness. So yeah, Seekers need to fight stuff that's better than them. Hellstriders of Slaanesh. I believe this is the Hell Scourges and the Spear variant. I just kind of lump them together because they're very similar. I'm going to put them in A. They're A or S, but since they're the Slaanesh variant, they do have immune to psychology and a little bit of physical resistance, so they won't tear right away from anything. One of them has a very small bonus versus large buff. The other one has poison and a little more melee defense. Both of them are quite good at running down things that are already routing or fighting light infantry, light cavalry. They're not that cheap compared to other stuff on this list. They are still an A tier, but 750 gold is not cheap. I believe that's for the Hell Scourge variant. So, yeah. They're a bit spency, and they are kind of squishy still. They're Slaanesh units. They don't have that much armor if you get them in a bad spot, but they'll do nice work for you. Costified Dervishes is going to end up in B tier. Used to be an A or an S tier unit, but they've taken a couple nerfs over the year and a half-ish that Kislev has been around. The main thing keeping them in B and out of C is Byra Blood. You can still just throw this thing at a backline and then it goes unbreakable for a little bit and it'll get onto the ranged unit you want to kill or the artillery piece. So you can kind of sacrifice them that way. But aside from that, if you're not just trying to cheese them with their unbreakable, they're pretty underwhelming. So the one unbreakable thing gets them from C to B. Otherwise, they don't trade well into other light cav. They don't kill infantry that well. Their stats aren't particularly good. Costified Dervishes are just kind of meh. But being suicidal at nearly 100 speed has some bonuses, I guess. Peasant Horsemen, another D tier. They are just like the Mounted Yeomen, same cost point, very similar stats, very similar use case. They're rather bad. You do see them sometimes because Grand Cathay just needs a couple mobile units to chase off things they rout with their impressive firepower, but they're not any good. It's just the fact that their faction happens to have nothing else to chase anything down makes them sometimes get taken occasionally, and that's pretty bad. And finally, in D tier as well, the Hobgoblin Wolf Raider. They just got a cost decrease. They're a little cheaper, but even then, they're still really bad. Their Archer variant is a little more useful, but the basic melee ones just lose to everything all the time. They're not worth 500 gold. They're abysmally poor. And I hate them. I've tried to use them for long enough. I really like the Chaos Dwarfs aesthetic, and I need something cheap to chase things down. These guys have just drained my resources for so long and caused me so many losses that now I've just adopted the strategy of not chasing anything down as Chaos Dwarfs and just daring it to come back. It's like, listen, when you rally and come back over here, I'll put you down again. It's fine. I'm not chasing you off with a 500 gold nothing. So, yeah. Rip Goblin Wolf Riders, and that was a quick and easy light cavalry list, much like the light cavalry themselves. Roar. Subscribe, yes.